Okay, today we have the Senate Majority Leader, Chuck Schumer. Thanks for coming on.
Great to be with you, Brian.
So let's dive in. I do want to start with what I think is the most important thing first, and that is that the Senate has unveiled S1, which is its version of HR1, the For the People Act. Is this bill identical to the one passed out of the House, and is it your top legislative priority?
Okay. It is just about identical to the one passed in the House. We're making a few technical corrections, and frankly, we are paying attention. As you know, one of the main reasons we have to pass S1 is the despicable action, the racist, bigoted action, in fact, of Republican legislators across the country trying to change the laws and not allow poor people, people of color, students to vote. The most outrageous one is in Georgia, one of the most outrageous, where African American people go to church on Sunday, then they get in buses and go to the polls. There's early voting for 2.5 weeks before the election. It's called Souls to the Polls. All of a sudden, the Georgia legislature, right-wing Republican, says no more absentee voting on Sunday. A few other states have said, whoa, you need a notary republic to vote by absentee. What poor person can afford to have a notary public come to their home? This is despicable, and it must be stopped. It's authoritarian. It's not democratic. S1 stops it, but the one thing we may change, we're looking at all the state laws and making sure S1 will stop every one of them before we pass it. That's the only kind of change we would make.
Got it. Well, will this bill not be brought to the floor for a vote unless the support to pass it is there? Or is the point to bring this bill specifically so that Republicans will block it and force a conversation about the filibuster?
Look, the days of Mitch McConnell's legislative graveyard are over. The House passed a lot of good things the last 2 years. McConnell would never let them even see the light of day. I'm going to put lots of bills on the floor. I just promised to put H.R. 8, the background checks, gun safety bill, on the floor. We want to see where people stand. I will put S1 on the floor, and we'll see if our Republican colleagues vote for this. Voting rights should not be a Democratic or Republican issue. When you lose an election, Brian, what you're supposed to do is win over the people you didn't win over, not tell the people you didn't win over you can't vote. And the Washington Post actually estimated more than 10 million people could be deprived their right to vote if all these laws passed. So we will put it on the floor. We will show where the Republicans are. There are some of my colleagues, who are not sure yet. They say, well, let's try to work with the Republicans. And if they all vote against it, we will put our heads in the caucus. We'll all put our heads together. We'll have caucus, we'll have discussions, and we will decide how to go from there. And what I say is, first, failure's not an option. We have to pass it. And everything is on the table in terms of how we get to pass it.
Basically, I think we can all agree that this bill will be what launches the filibuster war. So can you tell us the state of the filibuster reform talks as of
No,
now?
I don't have, you need all 50 people to vote for it. There's the overwhelming majority of my caucus is certainly considering it seriously. There are a couple who've said they won't vote for it. But I think one of the reasons they're saying they won't vote for it is because they say we can work with Republicans. If we put bills on the floor that are so popular, the gun background check bill has the support of 80% of the public, 90% of the public, 80% of gun owners. This bill, S1, has overwhelming support. And it's going to be a process. You can't just snap your fingers and make it happen, but it must happen. We must get these bills passed. And when people see, when my colleagues, even those who have some doubts, see that Republicans are blocking everything, our caucus will come together and figure out how we go forward. And failure is not an option. You know what I mean.
Well, as a little bit of pushback to that for those senators who are still, suggesting that there can be bipartisanship, look at the American Rescue Plan. That had support of 75% of Americans. It was for relief for Americans in the middle of a pandemic, and yet still not a single Republican voted for it. So, is there any acknowledgement from these certain Democratic holdouts?
No, it's going to be a process. I have a leadership team that meets every Monday night. Okay, it's 10 senators. We discuss what to do. Who's on the team? Bernie Sanders and Elizabeth Warren, Joe Manchin and Mark Warner. And we sit down and we discuss these things, and we know that our unity is our strength. With 50 votes, if we don't get Republicans, we have to have unity. And so it is a process of persuasion. Not everyone sees the world exactly in the same way, but if our Republican colleagues remain intransigent, we will have no choice but to look at other options.
Okay. And is that a sentiment that's shared across that leadership team?
It's widely shared, yes,
Okay.
throughout the caucus. Just on the bill you mentioned, this bill, I think it's worth mentioning because those 50 votes were hard, and the Republicans tried to break us away in every possible way, and we stuck with our unity. It is the most dramatic piece of progressive legislation in decades, in many, many years. It does so many things. It, provides checks, $1,400 because we wanted 2,000. In December, the Republicans wanted zero. We only got 600, but they were in charge then. I said if we got in charge, we'd get to the 2,000. Everyone who makes below 75,000 as an individual, 150,000 as a couple, will be getting those checks. It puts vaccines in people's arms. We have a large program where the federal government will set up centers all over the country. There will be adequate vaccines rather soon. People will line up, get the vaccines. It's expected that by early summer, there will be enough people vaccinated that we can go back to life pretty much as normal. That's a big thing. This is one of the biggest things. We close to double the child tax credit and the earned income tax credit. Half the children in poverty in America, Brian, will be removed from poverty. It's huge. It's huge to do that. And many of them, a large proportion, are people of color, black and brown people who have never had a real chance.
Yeah.
It's when a child is born into poverty, they don't get fed well, they don't get clothed well, housed well, medical care, not good education. When they're 18, they're so many steps behind. This is an investment in human capital that will not only help the kids in poverty and their families, it's going to help America. So I'm so proud of that. We get money to open up the schools quickly but safely, money to prevent people from being kicked out of their homes, $25 billion for that. And let me tell you two little things in there that people may not know. One of the things that breaks my heart, you see these pictures of children and grandchildren with their face up against that thick hospital glass guarding in front of a hospital room. And they're saying goodbye to their grandparents, to their parents. Even as great an indignity, or almost as great, there's no money for a funeral. There's no money for a burial. We put money in this bill. We put money in the original bill for the past year. We put money in this bill prospectively. And that will really, really help. Congressman Ocasio-Cortez called me up and said when Corona, part of Queens, was the center of the crisis, people can't bury their loved ones. We got this in the bill. It's going to be it's a big thing and matters to people. So there's so much. This covers the gamut. Money to get the restaurants open again. Money for our arts institutions, our stages, and our other places that have been closed and will go under. Same with restaurants. They'll get a 6-month grant. I'm sorry to wax so long, but there's so many good things.
No, I mean it's great, and I do want to give you the opportunity too to speak on one provision that's also lesser known, and that's the future student loan debt cancellation, making that tax free.
Yes, Elizabeth Warren and I have a mission. We have a lot of missions, but this is a mission. Joe Biden could forgive $50,000 of student debt with the flick of a pen. You don't need legislation. You don't need 50 or 60 votes. You can do it. It's all 93% of it is either federal loans or federal guaranteed loans, which the federal government can forgive legally. We're having a big campaign to push him to do it. But one of the reasons some of the people against it said, well, it's not even tax-free. We make it tax-free. If the loan is forgiven, you don't pay any taxes on it like you would on a gift tax or something else. So that is a big deal in here. And I would urge your listeners, you have a great listenership out there. Write, call, email President Biden. Say support Schumer, Warren, loan forgiveness for college students. So many people, by the way, it's a racial justice issue. 28% of the wealth gap between black and white is because of student loans. And a disproportionate number of people of color, young people and middle-aged, will be affected. By the way, if your parent took over your loans, they're eligible too to get the $50,000 forgiveness.
Yeah, that's great, especially because, like, let's say, you do get $50,000 in student loan debt canceled. Well, then all of a sudden, if you're getting taxed on that $50,000 as if it's income, even if you're at a 30% tax bracket, then you have a $15,000 tax bill after that. So
Gone,
I think,
gone. It's in our
yeah.
legislation. They can't tax it.
So I do want to jump back over just to the general topic of the filibuster, and that is that McConnell has threatened to come back and pass conservative agenda items if the Republican Party retakes the majority. And he's spoken about defunding Planned Parenthood and sanctuary cities, implementing nationwide right-to-work laws, anti-choice legislation, nationwide concealed carry reciprocity. What's your response to McConnell's threats?
Look, response is he's always trying to threaten and he's always trying to divert attention. He has nothing he can say about the American Rescue Plan because, as you said, 75% of the American people support it. 55% of Republicans support it. It affects everybody. When you get a check of $1,400, it doesn't matter if you're a Democrat or Republican. So he keeps trying to divert attention to all these parade of horribles. We're not going to let him stop us. We are not going to let him stop us. We believe, here's one of the things that makes this bill important in a big macro sense. Democrats believe government should be there to help people. We believe it's part of the solution. The Republicans believe it's part of the problem. And we have shown, when President Biden ran, we Democratic senators ran, the House Democrats ran, we said, put us in power and you're going to see some real change. And now people are seeing real change that's tangible. The $1,400 checks, the vaccines in their arms, the schools opening, the kids getting out of poverty. So McConnell is desperate to change the subject. We're just not paying attention to his rhetoric.
Well,
that's a harsher word that began with bull.
And by the way, I think anything that you say about a McConnell isn't. It's not as if it's not as if people haven't heard that or worse, yes, 10 times worse
indeed,
before.
Indeed,
so,
indeed. But he's now, he's not in charge anymore. He tried to push us around at the beginning, and we said no. We stood up, our whole caucus, and it's hard with 50 votes. I don't want anyone to think we can snap our fingers and make things happen. But I determine what's put on the floor, and it's going to be a whole different world than McConnell's world.
Speaking of McConnell, one more question I do have about him is that his legacy will have been reshaping the judiciary with young ideologues to lifetime appointments. We haven't seen that yet. So what's the plan for confirming judges on the left?
We are going to put, there are lots of vacancies because McConnell changed the rules. It's only 2 hours of debate for the district court judges. And I've already told the Biden administration we got to get a whole lot lined up, and we will just go through them. If it's 2 hours, we'll go boom, 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 boom. They have put such nasty right-wing people on the bench. We have to balance it and balance it quickly, and we will. Our first job had been to confirm Biden's cabinet. We had 3 jobs, Brian, when we started out. People said, how are they going to get all these done at once? Impeachment trial, I think we conducted an impeachment proceeding that was fair but strong. Even though we didn't get enough Republicans, only 7, the American people saw what a dastardly actor Trump was in this, and that he was the fomenter and cause of this.
Still the most bipartisan conviction vote in U.S. history.
Yes, exactly, and we did it in a fair way. The second thing we had to do, of course, is pass ARP, but we also had to get the president's cabinet put in first. And we have just about completed it. By next week, every cabinet official will be in. It's historic. Yesterday, we confirmed Deb Haaland, the first Native American to be in the cabinet. That's huge. Now Native Americans who've been so left out will have a voice, and that's great. And she will also make sure that the public lands, which she has jurisdiction over, which when Trump was there, they were just letting oil and gas run roughshod over our beautiful public lands. That'll be undone. By the way, and with Native Americans, another part of this bill, they got $20 billion in aid. Never before have Native Americans done as well. We're including people who have been excluded from the American experiment. So now that we're finished the cabinet, we will go on to judges, and we will have to work really hard and really strong and get strong progressive judges to balance these horrible right-wingers who he put on the bench.
Great. Well, that's good news, and we're looking forward to it. So, Senator Schumer, thank you so much for taking the time. I really appreciate it.
Brian, I enjoyed it. I'll come on again. I really enjoyed your show.